Hello, my name is Richard D. Fans. I'm profoundly deaf. Today I'm going to be using a mix of spoken words, BSL, SSE and Dutch. Also I've words on the screen over there to help me. So it's hard for me to start everything in BSL because of the words I knew. Why? My first language really is written English, but before I learned to sign, my first communication through writing. I won my first writing competition when I was 10, and I was published in the newspaper at 17. My crazy life started when I was 23. Why? Because I learned to be bilingual from a young age. I went to a deaf school and then later went to a mainstream school with a PhD, partial hearing unit. When I left school at 16, I went to college, but I hated it. So I got a job at the printer. Later, I became a graphic designer. But problems started. Why? Communication. People were really difficult to let me, and nobody wanted to sign. This was back in 1993, when interpreters were not available. This made me depressed, and I started to drink and smoke a lot. In the end, I became angry, very angry. Why? Because people didn't want to communicate. As a result of that, I was sectioned for the first time. I was sent to a psychiatric hospital. No way. There was nothing wrong with me. I was just frustrated with people who couldn't communicate with me. They put me into a mainstream psychiatric hospital. It was full of mad hearing people. What was I doing here? What am I doing here? I didn't understand. So I got more angry and angry. So they medicated me with some terrible drugs and I went completely mad. I protested. I went to social services. I tried looking for help, but nobody was there for me. I became angry and fought with a staff. It took 6 big men to try and control me, but in the end I fucked them off. I left the hospital because they couldn't control me, but I had to keep taking their medicine. The medicine made me very depressed. My mind was so dark. I waited until nobody was looking. Then I took an overdose. The doctors told my parents I had 50-50 chance of living or dying, but I lived. Over the next 2 years, I moved from hospital to hospital, but always at hearing psychiatric hospital. I wanted to be with deaf people. Nobody understood me, and I was more frustrated. I took more overdoses, but I always woke up. Next time, I decided, that's it, I'm going to hang myself. First time I hung myself, it failed. Second time, I got a strong climbing rope, a very strong rope, and I hung myself, and my face went blue, and I was finally dying. But I woke up on the floor with the rope snapped. Impossible. Maybe there is a God. Maybe. So after that, I decided that's it. I'm going to stop killing myself. It's hard to die, I went to university, but I had problems with my lecturers, no interpreters. I became argumentative. I got sectioned again, and I was locked in a medium sickle ward. It was very violent, but I managed to escape. While I was escaping, all the alarms were going off, and the doors were electronically locked, and he said tomato, Why? I threw the tomato in there. Everybody stopped. And then I used a blanket to lock the doors. The police couldn't get in, and I was shouting A, B, C, D, E, F, the finger alphabet. Took about 2 hours of this conflict, but in the end, a psychiatrist came down and agreed to learn sign language. The next day, I was kicked out of the hospital. 5 years later, I was in Spain. Again, I had a problem with people. Why? Communication breakdown. I told people to leave me alone. That's so difficult to understand. Leave me alone. Do you understand that? Do you? And then I climbed the mountain and took over. The police got involved. They sent an aeroplane looking for me. And in the end, it took 6 policemen with guns pointing at me to capture me. And I ended up in a psychiatric prison. Nobody spoke English. My hearing aid was stolen. And I was in an high security psychiatric prison. What an experience that was. Really hard for me to explain what that was like. Every morning, they dumped on me and injected me in the belly. Then I would fall into stupor. I was there for 1 month before they forced me to leave Spain. I came back to the UK and had to see a psychiatrist for 7 years. Everything was fine because for the first time I was put on the right medication. So I calmed down a lot. This was the first time I realised I was bipolar. 2 years ago, I was really stressed. I was really fed up with life. A exactly Wednesday, 18th of February 2015. I think in a way it was my midlife crisis. I questioned everything about life and decided that's it, I've had enough. I'm going to kill myself again. I jumped about 25 metres, about 82 feet, into the River Thames. And while I was falling, it was the most peaceful moment I'd ever felt. Falling. Everything in my mind was so quiet until I was falling. Something told me to open the line. And it was getting louder and louder and louder. Open no eye. And when I opened my eyes, boom! I hit the bottom of the River Thames onto a pile of concrete. I looked up and I thought, oh, beep. I survived. There was someone up there who said I'm not ready to die yet. I couldn't believe it, and then I passed out. The River Thames is arse and it swept over me, waking me up. I tried to stand up, but I realised I couldn't because I smashed both feet and I broke my back. I climbed out of the river, up the ladder, using my hands, climbing, and when I got out, I gave up. I thought hypothermia would kill me, cold, wet, and in winter, but I was still alive. There was nobody around, so I had to crawl on my hands and knees for 5.5 hours. I crawled, 5.5 hours until I found help. After that, I was taken to the King College Hospital in London. I don't remember the first 2 weeks, but it was painful. I had 7 screws in my right foot and 4 screws in my left foot and a metal plate in my spine. But one night, I argued with the doctors and nurses because of communication breakdown. In the end, it took 16 staff to hold me down, even though I couldn't stand up. I left the hospital after 5 weeks and went to the Bluebell ward, a Springfield hospital in London. This was the first time I went to a psychiatric hospital, and wow! what a difference. Everybody signed, even the doctors, the nurses, psychiatrists, that all signed. I couldn't believe the difference. After 24 years of mainstream psychiatric hospital and a lot of problems and a lot of violence, I found the Bluebell ward to be a place of peace. I had therapy in BSL, and for the first time in my life, I found peace with myself. I stayed there for 11 weeks and came out a different person. However, my problems are not over, because since leaving the Bluebell ward, I've had problems with the police. Why? Because of communication breakdown. That I've broken into my flat twice. I still have problems with people because of communication, but I won't give up. I will persist. Everybody has to learn communication. Doesn't matter if you are deaf, definite, or the hearing impaired, deaf blind, cochlear implant user, or hearing. It's important that you can communicate with each other. If you can't sign, write it down. If you can't speak, sign. If you can't write, just we all can communicate.